Thank you. We will now hear from the Observatory for Marine and Coastal Governance. Good afternoon. We'd like to start by thanking the President of the Court and the Honorable Judges for allowing us to participate in this hearing. I'm Lucía Maya Aguirre. I'm the Director of the Observatory for Marine Coastal Governance with the Center for Marine Justice. We're an NGO based in Colombia that builds capacity in island and coastal communities and also work with research. Our submission is based on the concept of marine justice, which is an extension of environmental justice to understand and differentiate the impacts and injustices in the marine environment, and also having in mind the rights of vulnerable coastal and island communities, especially those that are devoted to artisanal fishing, and also the differentiated responsibilities of developed countries with SIDS and countries with coastal areas and islands within their jurisdiction. We will underscore three elements pertaining to marine justice here. First, the obligation to ensure sustainable and equitable use of biodiversity in these areas by protecting these ecosystems, because they are carbon sinks, and due to the ecosystem services that they provide to humankind in general and coastal and island communities whose livelihoods depends on them, and also differentiated obligations of developed countries vis-a-vis the disproportionate effects of climate change for SIDS and countries with coastal areas and islands in their jurisdiction. And third, the declaration of the communities devoted to artisanal fishing as collective subjects of rights and victims of climate change. Now, I will give the floor to my colleague, if it please the court, who will speak about specific technical aspects. My name is Melany Velásquez Lozano. I'm the coordinator for education on oceans with the organization. Oceans absorb carbon dioxide to attain a balance between that the oceans and land. All of these marine ecosystems are carbon sinks. Ecosystem services were mentioned by Aida. Also, these marine grasslands are very important to absorb carbon dioxide, amongst others, and they desalinate seawater. They're a natural barrier against climate phenomena, and they are the refuge and habitat of many species. But the accumulation of greenhouse gases issued by man changes the chemistry of oceans, and that is a risk for marine life due to acidification, and the loss of oxygen in the oceans. As part of the GHG, aside from carbon dioxide, we see short-lived climate forcers, and that are very powerful, remain in the atmosphere for a short time, but are very powerful climate warmers. That includes methane, hydrofluorocarbons, amongst others. Methane, for example, is easily dissolved in the ocean water, which leads to acidification. And it is also present in permafrost, which is a layer of ice that is permanently frozen in different parts of the ocean. The warming of permafrost would release methane into the atmosphere with dire consequences for the climate system. It must be said that in a research done by us, exploitation and exploration of oil in the Greater Caribbean, the case of Colombia, a sample of environmental assessment studies was analyzed, and it sees that they omit impacts having to do with greenhouse gas emissions, the contribution to the carbon footprint, and the alteration of the ecological balance of these ecosystems, marine and coastal ecosystems, and also do everything having to do with the putting together and dismantling of rigs as well as shipping hydrocarbons, the cultural impacts on artisanal fisheries. Such as the reduction of fisheries and the interruption of fishing routes, inequality in the distribution of loads and benefits for local communities, and the interference with the fishing activities due to the economic exclusion zone. Um, Island populations are affected by cyclones, storms, droughts, changes in sea level, coral bleaching, and also the presence of invasive species as well as environmental displacement. As part of the vulnerable coastal and vulnerable island and coastal communities are the fisher folk who have to their livelihood jeopardized. The climate emergency negatively affects the economic autonomy of fisher women and those who collect shellfish, which negatively affects their life and increases their workload. In keeping with the broad advisory powers accorded to this court by the American Convention, it's necessary that the court create a corpus juris as part of the American Convention, the law of the sea, the several conventions on marine pollution under the IMO, and climate change. This procedure, these proceedings come at the same time as the NDCs are being prepared by the countries that are going to be submitted by states in 2025 under the Paris Agreement. So it is expected that the court should say that the NDC climate commitments must be developed and implemented in keeping with the obligations for respect, protection, and guarantee of human rights and based on respect for local knowledge. We must include the emissions from sea-based activities such as shipping and offshore oil exploitation, as well as other activities that affect coastal ecosystems and marine ecosystems, as well as short-lived climate forces and others. All of the impact of all of the greenhouse effect gas emissions should be assessed. Specific measures should be ordered to prevent, minimize, and remediate marine pollution. And it's necessary to recognize marine and coastal ecosystems as carbon sinks. It is recommended that the court find that coastal and island communities are vulnerable to the climate emergency and must be entitled to special protection, as we recommend that you include the communities that work with artisanal fishing and finding that these are collective subjects of human rights. The men and women who participate in the value chain of artisanal fisheries contribute to food security and local economies and the preservation of traditions, of connected traditions and customs. There is the right to benefit from science and scientific progress. Food security, access to participation, and access to information, amongst others. There is an international framework to serve as a basis for this findings, such as a general comment about the matter and about fisher folk and food security by FAO. There's a recommendation made to include the right. We recommend that the right to science be included in the advisory opinion. If bridges are built between the generation of scientific knowledge and local knowledge, mitigation adaptation processes to the climate emergency will be strengthened. Last but not least, based on the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities, the responsibilities of states be established and interpreted, differentiating those who are more have more of a share in the greenhouse gas emissions and having, especially in the cases of those most vulnerable communities that we just mentioned, in the written submissions to this court and also to the International Tribunal on the for the Court of the Sea and the International Court of Justice. We recommend that marine justice be included as a as a foundation for the obligations of the states. We are convinced that this advisory opinion will be an essential source for international law in the face of the climate emergency to contribute to a more sustainable and equitable planet from the legal standpoint. As was said by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, it is not yet too late to build a utopia that will enable us to share this earth. Thank you.
Thank you to the representatives of the Observatory for Marine Coastal Governance. To